Hello Kel67 Gaming, it's been a while since we've done one of these, but I'm going to do a favourite 5. If you have been watching the channel, you know that I have previously done favourite 5, and it was my favourite 5 games that I have in the physical collection. I decided to go console specific this time, and what better console to start with than the first console I ever owned. This is my favourite 5 games for the Atari 2600. Well, let's get on to the first of my favourite 5. Here it is. So there we have Enduro, originally designed by a guy called Larry Miller and released as far back as 1983. This was a game that I absolutely loved as a young kid. It's not a particularly complex game. None of these Atari games are. To be fair, they're more like mini games that you would get now in a party collection, you know, like a Mario Party or something like that. But what Enduro brought to the table was a race that went over multiple conditions. So you start off, it's all very green and sunny. It goes to white, which is obviously snow. Then you can go night time, where you just see the taillights of the cars around about you. Then gets foggy, where you only see the bottom half of the screen. None of this actually affects the way that the car handles. It's a bit of a twitchy game, but really quite addicting when you get into it. So that's why it's on my list. I really loved the game as a kid. I can still play it now, although I do recognise its limitations. But you're going to find that with every Atari 2600 game that you come across. So that's the first one out of the way. Let's see what I've picked. Number 4. So there we are, Frogger. For those who know, Frogger was obviously an arcade game that was originally developed by Konami. There was an Atari 2600 port, which was released by Parker Brothers, who seemed to get quite a lot. I remember back in the day, they got these licensed games. They done all the Star Wars ones and that sort of thing. Frogger was by far the best. Possibly because the simplicity of the arcade game lent itself very well to the limitations of the Atari 2600 hardware. It's a game that I can still play today. although I've never really been particularly good at it, I have to admit. But it's definitely worthy of a place on the list. So that's positions 5 and 4 dealt with. Guess it's time to go for position 3. So another Activision game, this time is Pitfall, which was released in 1982. So you can work out just how long ago that was. Obviously, it is the genesis of every platform game that has come since. Massively successful. I'm still really bad at it, but still actually enjoy it. It's one of those rare things with some platform games where you feel they're cheating. Pitfall, I feel all the time, but I know it's my fault. I've messed up. That is a very special thing for any game where it can be challenging, but you always know it's your fault. So yeah, Pitfall number 3. Which game? It's got to be number 2. Now I think this is the oldest game on my list. This is actually a first party Atari game, Battlezone, which was released all the way back in November of 1980. So as of today's date, we're now just into 2018. This game is nearly 40 years old. And not only is it a great Atari 2600 game, this in 4K of memory, which is what you had on an Atari 2600 cartridge, this is a 3D first person shooter. Shouldn't be able to be done. Absolutely shouldn't be able to be done. And to be fair, wasn't really done after, not until much later generations of consoles. We were getting right into PlayStation 2, original Xbox before we really got first person shooters, and here is one popping up on the Atari 2600. Brilliant game, and really pushing the hardware to the limits in 1980. So we've had a rundown of 5, 4, 3 and 2. I'm sure there's people who are familiar with the Atari 2600 who are guessing what my favourite game ever on the Atari 2600 is. But you don't have to guess for much longer, because here we go. I'm sure some of you would have guessed that one. This is another Activision game. Activision were a great publisher on the Atari 2600. This game's H.E.R.O. It was originally designed by John Van Ryzen back in 1984. So it's a comparatively late release for the Atari 2600. Obviously, Atari being a company based in the States, this postdates the video game crash that they had over there, which we didn't actually get in Europe. So as far as I was concerned as a kid, this was just another game that was coming out. Absolutely loved it. It's, on the face of it, a very simple game where you rescue hostages, you go through cabins to get there. But actually, again, it's one of these games where, although it's quite simplistic, it really is pushing the Atari 2600 hardware to the limit. You know, you're dropping bombs, you've got the helicopter rotator pack on your back, you can shoot enemies. So there's quite a lot to it. And for that reason, it is my favourite game that was ever released on the Atari 2600. And that's my list. I'm sure that there's people who've got things that, oh, why didn't you pick X, Y, and Z? There are other games that came very close to coming on my list. I don't believe in honourable mentions, so I'm not going to mention them. But if you have got any games that you really think should have been included, there's a comment section down there. Tell me about it. It may be one of the games that came very close. It may be a game that I never thought of, possibly because I never played it. With these older systems, you don't play every game. You can't find them. So that's my list. I hope you enjoyed going through it with me. If you did, please give the video a like down here somewhere. If you could also give a subscribe, I believe it's down there somewhere, and there's a bell there to get notifications, and up there you can share the video. See, got all bases covered. Until next time, keep gaming.